Hi class, so this week we're covering chi-square test of independence. So the chi-square is one of the commonly used statistics to test the association between two variables that are measured at the nominal or at the ordinal level. So the variables tested by chi-square may have two or more categories. A lot of the variables that you may be able to run a chi-square with would be like demographic variables such as gender, marital status, race, disability. You can also use it for dependent variables that are measured at the nominal or ordinal level as well. So for example, you may have a yes or no, or level of improvement may be measured as none, some, or a great deal, or maybe like type of place, a type of placement, for example, shelter, foster care, group home. So with the chi-square, you can use it with variables that are measured at either nominal or ordinal. So you could have two nominal, or if you have two ordinal, or if you have one of each. All right, so today we're gonna look at satisfaction with study skills. So we're looking at students who attend the Commerce campus and the Mesquite campus, and we're looking at their satisfaction with their study skills. So there's three categories for that one. It's dissatisfied, neither satisfied or dissatisfied, or satisfied. So here is the data set that we have. The first step is to calculate totals for each of these. So here we're gonna do equals sum, double click, and then we're gonna do both of those, hit enter. Okay, so for this one, you can do the same thing here, or you can drag it across. So here, let's do it one more time. Equals sum of these two. And then if you want to just drag it across to here, you can do that. And then same thing for here. So we just did the totals for the columns. Now let's do totals for the rows. Equals sum of all three. And then again, we can just drag it down. Okay. So we have a total of 75 students that attend, 50 attend Commerce and 25 attend Mesquite. All right, so first step is to calculate the total for all of those. Next, we have to calculate the expected value. Okay, so for the expected value, and before we get into that, before I forget, these values that we already have or that we were given, those are our observed values. So I'm just gonna put observed here. So from your data set that you're gonna get for your homework, those are gonna be your observed values, all right? Okay, so to calculate the expected, we're gonna look at Commerce students first. So we're gonna do equals the total column, or before we do that, make sure we open our parentheses. So equals the total column for the first column times the total for the rows for Commerce students. And then we're going to divide that by the total amount. Okay. And I'm going to do this again for neither. So again, it's equals, open parentheses. We're going to do total for the column times total for the rows, and then divided by the total amount. Equals total, let's open parentheses, total amount times total rows divided by the total amount, okay? And then that's for commerce. Then we do the same thing for Mesquite students. So it's going to be equals, open parentheses, total column for dissatisfied times the row for the row total for Mesquite students divided by the total amount of students. Same thing here, equals, open parentheses, total column for neither times total row for Mesquite students divided by the total number of students. So equals, open parentheses, total column for satisfied times row total for Mesquite students divided by the total number of students. And that's how we get our expected. So now we have our expected values. All right, so those are our expected values. Now that we have our expected, our next step is to subtract the expected from the observed for each of the campuses. So we're going to start here. Equals observed so it will be 13 minus expected. Same thing here, equals 3, which is the observed for Mesquite dissatisfied, minus their expected, so observed equals for neither equals 2 for commerce minus their expected equals 4 for Mesquite observed for neither minus 2 for the expected. So equals commerce observed for satisfied minus commerce expected for satisfied, and then equals Mesquite observed for satisfied minus Mesquite expected for satisfied. All right, so now we have our observed values, or observed minus expected values. All right, next step, we're gonna do observed minus our expected squared. So we've already calculated that step here, observed minus expected. So now we're gonna square those. So we're gonna do equals, we're gonna go to formulas, we're gonna go to math, we're gonna look for power, and then we're gonna do commerce first for dissatisfied. We're gonna do it to the second power because we're squaring it, and then that's what we get. We're gonna do that for Mesquite. So equals, formulas, math, power, and this one's gonna be for Mesquite dissatisfied to the second power, and then we can do the same thing. So you could always put in the $ and drag these across, or you can just calculate it. So equals, the formulas going to math, then we're looking for power, and it's neither for commerce, so equals, we're doing math, power, and so we're looking at or observed minus expected for neither Mesquite, which is 2 down here, and we do that to the second power. All right, and then equals formulas, math, power, We're doing satisfied for commerce to the second power. And there we go, equals math power satisfied for mesquite to the second power. And we have our observed minus expected squared. Also, we can always round off these numbers to 2 decimal places. I'll just do that at the end. All right, so now that we calculated that, the next step is to calculate your observed minus your expected squared divided by your expected. All right, so observed minus expected squared are these numbers. And our expected is up here. So what we're going to do first, we're going to do equals observed minus expected squared for commerce divided by the expected for commerce for dissatisfied. And there you go. Same thing for mesquite, equals observed minus expected squared for mesquite for dissatisfied students divided by the expected for mesquite dissatisfied students. And then we do the same thing for these two. So equals commerce for neither divided by, okay, sorry about that, I did the wrong one. Okay, so equals their observed minus expected squared for commerce for neither is right here, divided by their expected. So equals observed minus expected squared for mesquite for neither divided by expected for neither mesquite students. Okay, and then equals observed minus expected for satisfied commerce students divided by expected satisfied commerce students. And then the last one equals the observed minus expected squared for mesquite satisfied students divided by their expected. All right, and so what I was saying is that you can go ahead and change these into 2 decimal places. You just do format cells, right click, format cells, go down to number, make sure 2 decimal places is checked, and hit OK, and then it changes it for you. All right, so now that we've done those steps, the next step is to calculate your chi-square. Okay, so to calculate the chi-square statistics, you're going to add up the observed minus expected squared divided by expected. So you're going to add those up. So we will have 2. We will have the commerce one, and then we'll have the mesquite one. So we can do equals sum and we're going to do commerce first. Oops, okay, something went wrong here. Let's see what happened. Equals sum, and then we double click and enter those for commerce, and then equals sum, double click mesquite, and we have those 2. So then to get the chi-square, we're going to add both of those up because we just want one number. Okay, so equals sum of both mesquite and commerce, and our chi-square statistic is 4.54. Okay, so we have one more step, and that's calculating our p-value. And to calculate our p-value, we're going to need, we can either do formulas or we can use the analysis tool pack. I'm just going to do the formula. So we're going to need the equals chi-test. So make sure you pay attention because there's like chi-square distribution, chi-square test. We're going to do the chi-test. We're double clicking on that. And so it tells you what you need to include. So you need to include the actual range and the expected range. So the actual range, remember, is the actual data set you got first. So the actual range is Commerce for dissatisfied, neither, and satisfied, as well as Mesquite. And the expected range, you make sure you put the comma in between. So comma, and then the expected range for Commerce and Mesquite from dissatisfied to neither and satisfied is this right here, and hit enter. And this is our p-value. And again, we can right click, format cells. We're going to do number in 2 decimal places, and here's our p-value. Okay. All right, so our p-value is 0.10. So our p-value was not significant because generally we use the 0.05. And so this one was not significant. So then to write up our results, we need several pieces of information. We're going to need the degrees of freedom, we need the chi-square statistic, and then we're going to need the p-value. So the degrees of freedom is, there's a formula for that. So your degrees of freedom is basically your rows, the number of rows minus 1, times the number of columns minus 1. So we had, let's see, we had 2 rows and then we had 3 columns. Okay, so 2 minus 1 times 3 minus 1 equals 1 times 2, which is 2. So our degrees of freedom is 2. And there's different ways that you can report this. And so I'm going to use the textbook. Generally, we follow APA format. So chi-square, and then you need your degrees of freedom, which we said was 2. And then the next one is your chi-square statistic. So we come back down here and look for a chi-square statistic. That was 4.54. So after degrees of freedom, 4.54 for our chi-square statistic, comma, p greater than to make sure you change back from symbol to your regular font. So P is greater than 0.05. Okay, so that's how you would report your chi-square statistic. So a chi-square test of independence was calculated comparing satisfaction with study skills for Commerce and Mesquite students. No significant relationship was found. Here is your results. Chi-square, your degrees of freedom of 2, your chi-square statistic of 4.54, and p greater than 0.05. Okay. Other than that, as always, make sure you report your descriptive statistics. So make sure you go ahead and you calculate your descriptive statistics for the data set before you do that. And once you calculate the descriptives, then when you're writing up the results, you will also talk about your descriptives. Okay. But since we've already covered descriptives and you guys are well familiar with that, I'm not going to include that in here, but you would also make sure you include that in your homework. All right. And that's how you would write up your descriptives. You would write up your, and that's how you'd write up your results for your chi-square test of independence. So here are the steps that you will need to complete homework number 7, our final homework. I've outlined it for you. What I would do is basically go ahead and label your Excel worksheet ahead of time. That way you know exactly what step is coming next. And on your homework worksheet, it does have instructions for each one of these steps. So there's, step-by-step instructions on your homework assignment. So a chi-square test of independence was conducted on study habits or satisfaction of study habits for commerce and Mesquite students. Okay, and you can say no significant relationship was found, or the results was not statistically significant. There's just different ways that you can word that. You can go back to your textbook, page 391. It shows you how you can write it up for more detailed information on how to write up that as well. Okay. Again, don't forget to include your descriptives, but just wanted to make sure you understood how to write up the chi-square as well. All right, and that was it for our final homework.